Hey, welcome to God, the Bible, and Spiritual Things Explained, where you get insight surrounding God, the Bible, and spiritual things that you may or may not have heard before. This is God's child. Thank you for joining me for this very first episode of God, the Bible, and Spiritual Things Explained. I'm not really going to go in depth on any particular topic for this episode. I just want to give you a glimpse into what you have to look forward to in future episodes and discussions. Some of the things we'll be covering are questions that you or others may have had when it comes to God or the Bible or again, spiritual things. Okay. And you may not have had those answered before. You could be Christian, you may not be Christian, and you don't have to be Christian to have these questions. But these are some things that we may be covering here on this podcast. Something else we'll be looking at are the lies that have been taught about the Bible, of things that are in the Bible, whether it's church leaders who've been teaching this or people who profess to be Christians or followers of Jesus or others. We'll be looking at some of those things that have been incorrectly taught to people, that people believe and then they go on and share with other people, which just leads to more people believing the wrong thing. And I can say for myself, I've sat in churches and heard leaders basically just saying certain things are sins that are not sins according to the Bible. And then the things that are sins, they whitewash or justify, of course. For their own reasons. But these are things that people need to know the truth about. And many times, if you haven't read the Bible, or had a good understanding of it, then you won't know the difference. You will believe what they have told you because you haven't actually been able to uncover that truth for yourself in the Bible. So we'll be going over some of those things. We'll be looking at controversial topics, okay? Things that people consider taboo or that, they have a different slant on. And if you bring a different point of view, they're ready to stone you. Seriously. They are. For example, there are books that were once a part of the Holy Scriptures before they came out with the Holy Bible that people say were false as to why they weren't included in the actual Holy Bible. Well, if they are false, yet some of these books are actually referenced, mentioned in the Holy Bible concerning certain events. So if they're saying that these books are actually false or not inspired by God, but they're mentioned or referenced in the Holy Bible, hmm, wouldn't that make the Holy Bible false? Hmm, I don't think so. That the Holy Bible is false, but I think that those people who are saying that those books are false, they haven't really read the Bible and may not have actually seen that those books that weren't included in the Holy Bible are mentioned in the Bible. So, those are some things that we'll look at as well, even looking at some of those books that weren't included there and going over some of the things and events that happen in those books that are actually relevant to the Bible and give more explanation to things that make people question the Bible or gaps in certain stories in the Bible that just kind of don't make sense to people that can be answered by some of those books. So we'll be looking at that too. Something else we'll look at are phenomena or experiences that people have or have had that they don't understand. But these experiences and phenomena, although there are people that are in the church or others who dismiss them or are not able to explain them or think that they have no relation to the Bible or to God or anything, good, which they may not have anything, related to that which is good. But they can be explained by the Bible. So we'll be looking at some of those experiences that people have, shared before, or that, I know of, and we'll be looking at how they can be related to the Bible. And along those lines, a lot of people have a problem with the Bible because they don't see how it can actually apply to their lives, because they're like, listen, this is about like people from like thousands of years ago, like almost like Stone Age. How does this relate to my life? How can it? It can't. However, it can. And perhaps they just haven't had someone who can actually show them how it actually applies, or they haven't read it for themselves to see how it applies, which is another thing when it comes to reading. I am very aware, not just for the Bible, but in reading in general, most people don't enjoy it. Okay, I'm one of those people who used to. I used to love it like so much. But really, the majority of people in the world do not enjoy reading. So if you try to say, well, you need to read like the book related to your religion, in the case of Christianity, the Holy Bible, or Islam, the Quran, and then other faiths have their reading material as well. If you try to tell them you need to read this, most of them are going to think it's boring, and they're not going to do it, because let alone them read any other thing, outside of that. So we're going to look at, how, you know, the Bible can actually be interesting. Okay, how it just depends on how you look at it, and we'll be looking at stories and things that hopefully will encourage you to want to read for yourself. Because one of the things that happen when you don't read for yourself is that you are more vulnerable to being led astray, or believing in a lie that someone has told you because you haven't read and you're just relying on what they tell you. And that is the case, when it comes to whether it's Christianity and even other things. I've heard people saying things, or people have told me about other religions that weren't true. They're like, no, it's not part of religion. Then lo and behold, you go and you find it, a scripture or passage that actually says that thing. So therefore, I know they haven't read it, or either they are just deciding not to follow it, or have some different interpretation of it. But it's important, for us to be able to read, for ourselves, to get that information, so that we know that we know that we know that we know. Okay, instead of uh, relying on, like, others for the truth of the information, because people are not perfect. I'm just saying, people are not perfect. So sometimes they're tempted to, like, actually lie for certain reasons, or they just may have the wrong information that was taught to them and they didn't actually read for themselves too. Something else we'll be looking at are misconceptions about God and Jesus. Now, many of you probably have heard, people say, what would Jesus do? Or WWJD. Most of the time, these people are, referring to people who do believe in God or Jesus, that they should act a certain way and only have responses in a certain way that are, in their opinion, uh, what would be nice and kind and letting you be trampled over, pretty much. Okay. However, most of those people, when I hear them and when they're saying, what would Jesus do in terms of the situations they're applying it to, well, I know that they haven't read the Bible. Not the complete Bible, as that they may have read snippets or certain scriptures, but they definitely have not read all the parts that include Jesus when he was actually here, and gotten a chance to see how he reacted and responded, or didn't respond, to some people in different situations. Because if they're applying that same thought of what would Jesus do as nice and kind and being trampled on, they would assuredly demonize Jesus, because there were definitely some responses and reactions and non-responses that Jesus had that they would not approve of. Okay, but that's for a future episode. Okay. And we'll just have maybe some teachings and studies about different, maybe stories in the Bible, passages, scriptures, and other things. You can expect exactly what this podcast says. You're going to get an explanation of God, the Bible, and spiritual things here. And we'll just go through that discussion, not saying that you have to agree or disagree. That's your choice. The great thing is that we bring these discussions to the forefront, and then you're able to listen to decide what you want to believe. And I always encourage you and hope that you would do your own research and your own studying, because hey, don't just go by what I say or anyone else who may be here says, or anyone outside says. You need to know for yourself so that you can know that you know that you know, and not say you know just because so and so said. So I invite you and look forward to having you joining for future discussions. So catch you another time, another day, another episode for God, the Bible, and spiritual things explained.